Hello, everyone, and welcome to the RISMedia Agent Webinar Series. Today's topic is maximizing your niche, how to specialize and dominate a target market, sponsored by Resides. I'm Tina Lapp. I'm head of industry relations and career excellence for Calibri Real Estate Schools. I'm here with such an exciting panel and excited to dive in, but let's start with introduction. So Colette's with Resides. Colette, will you introduce yourself?
Certainly. I'm Colette Stevenson, the CEO and president of Resides. We are a borderless MLS that is independent and been around for quite some time. And our niche, if you want to call it, is that we've taken MLS a little step further and expanding our reach so that we're borderless and taking what we've learned as a small niche market and bringing it to everyone who would like to participate. So
that's awesome. Let's go to Skylar. Yeah.
Hey, so I'm Skylar Lemons. I'm a sixth-generation entrepreneur, second-generation real estate broker here in Chicago with Exit Strategy Realty. And they call me the down payment grant king because I specialize in helping first-time, low to moderate income buyers access down payment assistance to decrease their out-of-pocket expenses when buying a home.
That's great. Welcome, and thanks for being here, Skylar. And let's go to Bob.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Bob Clarkson. I'm the founder of the Alliance Group Realty. Started the company about 11 or 12 years ago. And last November, I sold the company to Alan Tate and Howard Hanna. I've been in the real estate business for 47 years. I was 11 when I started. And so I have a long career. I won't get into that because it'll take up most of your program. But I was an agent. I was also a franchise director in a franchise organization. And then again, most recently, the Alliance Group Realty, which is an independent brokerage here on Hilton Head Island.
That's great. So impressive, Bob. Thank you. As we get started, Colette, will you jump in and comment on why you're sponsoring today and what this topic means to you?
So we are a multiple listing service, and it is very important that a multiple listing service be responsive and listen to the entire group of people that we serve, right? And every person has a niche, whether they know it or not. And either they know it and they need to work to do more for it, or they need to find it, right? And you can find it anywhere. And I think people just have to look hard enough. It doesn't take long to find it. If you talk about something a lot, doesn't necessarily have to be real estate, that may be your niche, right? So today, I think it's so important that with so much change going on in the marketplace continually, not just technology-wise, it could be economically, it could be policy-wise, it could be lots of different things that any agent needs to find their niche, but the niche can also change. And being responsive as a service provider for agents and brokers, it's important that we're kind of staying ahead of some of that, but also listening when people come to us and say, how can we help make your niche better? We do it frequently, and I love those challenges. It's actually a fun thing to have to work through.
That's awesome. So let's dive into that a little bit. And as we get into this, we'll see that evolve even more. So let's start with Skylar. Skylar, what's the value of having a niche market if you're a real estate professional?
I believe that the value in having a niche is kind of speaking on what Colette said, where being that go-to person in your marketplace for a specific thing. A lot of us real estate agents, we underestimate the power of a niche. And you'll see a lot of agents kind of market themselves as, hey, if you're looking to buy or sell, give me a call. I personally don't believe that that's going to be as effective as if you have one corner of the market that you're targeting and you kind of deliver the same message over and over, right? What'll end up happening is that when you speak to one person, a lot of people will actually come to you because they'll feel like you're speaking directly to them. As opposed to when you kind of just give them the generic, hey, if you're looking to buy or sell, I mean, sure, you may generate leads from that, but you're not really speaking to the pain point. And so I feel like the niche goes hand in hand with someone's, with a pain point. You're solving a pain point.
Yeah, it's really a specialization that you become an expert in, right?
Correct.
Yeah. Yeah. So
Sometimes
this,
somebody else's pain is your gain, right?
yeah, right. That tends to happen. Yeah. And looking for those opportunities. So this will be fun. Bob, will you take a moment, talk about your niche and how you discovered the opportunity?
Well, we were just obviously a general brokerage company selling homes, villas, lots, new construction, all those kinds of things. And our niche actually happened kind of by accident, really. I was doing a friend of mine a favor. He called me one day and said, "Hey, listen, I'm over here at this motor coach resort. They sell lots that people put luxury motor coaches on. It's a gorgeous, gorgeous place, Hilton Head Motor Coach Resort." And he said, look, we got a mess over here and I need someone with a lot of brokerage experience who can help me. And it was a mess. There was contracts missing and we had to do a whole bunch of things to try to put it on its feet. So I helped him through that turmoil to give him my best advice on what they needed to do going forward. And in the process, they started talking to me about, okay, so we really like you. Would you do this for us? And I said, nah, I don't think so. We're kind of in the brokerage business. I don't know, motor coach lots is so far outside what our wheelhouse. And so I started asking agents. And by the way, let me add this in too. There was 2 other companies that looked at this opportunity and said, no, thanks. It's not what we do. So I began talking to some agents around the office, and one said, nah, I don't think I want to get involved. I said, drive over and look at it. And they said, no, I don't want to sell motor coach lots. I sell houses. So I ended up working with a lady who had just come to work for us out of she was in the property management business, and it kind of fit. And I began talking to her. She was new realtor, and I showed it to her. And I said, I think you can sell 15 or 20 lots a year in here, and they're selling for $150,000. A great place for you to start. Turns out she was dating one of our top producing agents. His name is David Bragg. And by the way, David and Renee are now married. Kind of a cool story. So David said, honey, I'll jump in and help you with this. And so they did, and we put our head together. We went after this thing, and I told her we'd sell 15 to 20 lots. We sold 45 the first year for about $7.5 million in volume. So it really happened, I got to be honest with you, it kind of happened by accident. And I didn't realize, and I think this is a great message for this meeting, is that sometimes these unique things that are right underneath our nose that people look at and say, no, I don't want to do that. That's not what I do. It could be a boat slip situation. I have a sailboat, boat slips are a big deal. It's some specialty thing that a lot of other realtors really don't want to touch. It's outside their wheelhouse. And I think that's where there's some great opportunity, like there was here with us with David and Renee and the motor coach resort.
Yeah, wow. And Colette, I have to ask you to chime in. You said their pain is your gain. Like that's a perfect example, right?
Yeah, I mean, everyone has a chance to be a hero, right? In this particular scenario, there's other niche markets. There's a real estate agent in our market who just so happened to be talking to someone out one night to find out that they actually are selling mobile homes. They had a problem. They needed someone who could find lots that they could actually put the mobile homes on. And that's not an easy find. And so learning and educating yourself about that little bit of a niche, then all of a sudden, 5, 10, maybe 15 deals come out of that, right? These lot deals, or an investor calls and says, hey, that's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for, lots to put these mobile homes on. You have to listen to every conversation you're having. And as an MLS, like when Bob came to us and said, hey, we've got these mobile home lots, we need to try to market them. How are we going to do that? What can we do? And it becomes a challenge, right? And as how we're going to put those in the system, how they're going to get marketing, how is it so that everyone has exposure to it, and all the buyers and sellers can see them, right? And so we worked with him to get those exposed for him, and I'm sure he'll tell you a little more about that. But I think if your MLS is not giving you the latitude to grow in your niche, then they're not working for you like they need to. And one of those is being a borderless MLS, and just allowing people to enter all types of listings is just important. I think, Skylar, you mentioned the other day when we were talking that, the down payment issue is a big deal, and how the MLS can help work for you on that.
Absolutely. So, I mean, I guess I kind of got into my niche kind of similar to Bob by accident. I got licensed when I was 24 years old. And the first thing that they tell all of us when we get licensed is to work your sphere of influence. Well, obviously at 24 years old, a lot of people who I would talk to about buying a house would come back and say, Skylar, you're crazy. Send me some apartments. And so I started talking to different lenders, and I realized that, all lenders have different guidelines. And so when it came to down payment assistance, historically, agents just would be like, it takes a long time. Those deals, whatever they need to say as their excuse to not touch them. And so my team and I, we started learning some of those different policies that the lenders have in place, learning who has the money with less red tape available, learning who has the money without recapture periods and things of that nature. And one of the ways that our MLS could actually assist us is when the listings are uploaded. A lot of these programs work in low to moderate income areas. And so it would be nice to have a tool, in the MLS that just kind of shows us like, hey, um, this property will qualify for these down payment programs and such.
Yeah. I think that's great. And look at such a difference in the different niches, but such opportunity finding really where you're going to specialize in. So I'd love to dive deeper into each one because they are so interesting, and I think our listeners would love to hear more. So we'll go back to Bob and come back to you, Skylar. So let's dive a little bit deeper. What strategies, Bob, have you found most effective for attracting buyers and sellers in the RV resort market?
Yeah. Well, let me first, before I jump into that, I'd like to say my compliments to, first of all, Skylar, I love your story, man. I think that's just awesome, helping people buy their first time homes. It's just such a noble thing to do. And of course, Colette, I want to compliment Colette because I sat down with Colette early on and say, hey, listen, we got this motor coach resort. It's really way out of the ordinary. There are lots that people park their luxury $1 million motor coaches on. So it's not a building lot. They can't put a tiny house on it or any of these kinds of things. It's a completely different category of property type. And she listened, and I love it when people do that. Instead of just saying, oh, we don't have a category for that. She said, no, tell me more. So we spent quite a bit of time, and ultimately we ended up going to the POA and doing an actual feed for just those lots on their website, so that the people that were interested in motor coach lots, instead of looking at every lot or every property in the whole entire Hilton Head Bluffton market, they could just look only at that particular type of property. And she helped us provide that feed. It's a very specialized, limited feed, and it now is running within the POA site. When people go to HHIMR, it's Hilton Head Motor Coach Resort.com, there it is. And that's a huge value to not only to the brokerages, but to all the individual people who own lots in there. So back to your original question. I just had to say that because I just love Colette. I mean, she's such a, she listens and she acts and she does what she says she's going to do. Just love her.
Well, thanks, Bob.
You're welcome. You're welcome. There'll be a lot of favors later, that. No, just kidding.
Well, tell them about the fact that one of the reasons why that was so important was because of the way people normally rent those, right?
Correct, exactly. And so back to the real question you asked me is, so the motor coach resort is a place where people can go in and rent. There's 405 lots. And so if you're driving one of these big Prevost motor coaches and you want to go to Hilton Head Island, you find a lot. People rent, they travel around and they rent a lot for, a week or whatever it may be. And so most of the buyers, like 90% of the buyers, are people who go there and they rent and they fall head over heels in love with it. And there we are, letting them know, hey, if you really like it, you can buy one of these. And so that was a huge thing for us. I mean, we recognized that very quickly. We worked with the front gate. We actually signed an agreement with the POA initially. We said, listen, we'll clean up this mess and help you out with this, but we want an agreement that's a preferred realtor agreement. And part of that agreement was the fact that every person coming through the gate with a motorhome gets a copy of the brochure of the properties that we have for sale. It allows us to know who they are, so we can kind of keep our eye out for them. So the marketing part of it was we did a lot of unique things. Frankly, the handouts, just being in the clubhouse, we got a golf cart and we put the Alliance Group Realty, David and Renee on there, and we would ride around. They would ride around the motor coach resort and be there, and people would come out and say, hey, you guys, how are you? Tell me about these lots, and want to look at one, get in a golf cart. So we did a lot of creative things like that to make people aware, the renters aware, that this is a good investment. This is a really beautiful place to have a permanent lot. They could put it back into the rental market and recapture some of their money. So, I mean, that's basically how we did it. But the bottom line is that we were converting the renters to buyers. I mean, that's what it all came down to. Probably similar to Tyler, is converting renters to buyers, right?
Yeah,
So.
yeah, that's great. And so, Bob, how do you stay informed about trends and changes in the RV lifestyle and resort industry?
Yeah, we've pretty much been focused. By the way, I think how many years are we into that now? 7 or 8 years, I think it is. Really our clients tell us, because they are motor coach people and they travel all over the United States. And so a lot of times they're telling us, here's what's going on in Florida, or we were in Arizona this summer, or whatever. And then we also at one point did some research, and we actually picked up the phone and after some research, and we started calling other motor coach resorts, high-end motor coach resorts, and talking to them about what their challenges were and what they're doing to solve them and things like that. So we reached out to other motor coach resorts and just basically kept our eye on the industry.
That's great. So yeah, so let's jump over to Skylar. Skylar, your story's a bit different, and I'd love to hear, how are you working with buyers and sellers in your market today?
Well, I primarily leverage social media to kind of send that message. And so if you looked at my social media, you would see that the primary message that I'm trying to deliver is that, if you need to buy a property if you're looking to buy a property with little to no money down, here's how we do it. And I walk people through the strategy. And oftentimes when I'm talking to people, I'm actually walking through an actual property that's on the MLS. And so it just makes it feel very, very real. Social media is one thing, but then there's an entire back end that goes with it. And so, it started with making these viral posts. And then once I kind of figured that out, I'm like, okay, great. I got 1 million views, but I got 0 leads. So what do I need to do to kind of capture those people's attention? And I realized that, in our business, we have to kind of lead with the value. And so I came up with these different lead magnets. Here's a grant list, or here's a guide to buying your first property with little to no money down. And people often will opt into those. And this gives the consumer an opportunity to kind of slightly raise their hand, which is what people want to do at realtors, right? People very, very rarely just want to raise their hand and say, hey, I'm ready to buy a house today. Most of the time, it comes with a lot of prep work on the front end. And so getting them into my ecosystem, getting them to download one of my lead magnets, and then that way I have their contact info and I can consistently email them, and I can consistently send mass text messages. And so that's kind of been what I've been doing. I've realized that most people, when they're searching online for things, it's a 6-month life cycle with most of my leads. And so once I get your contact info, even if we hop on a call, I get a lot of people calling back like, hey, I'm ready to do it now. And so just kind of creating that environment. But it's been largely with social media. And from that, I've been able to generate 2,000 leads, buyer leads primarily in my market. And I didn't spend any money to get that, right? So.
Yeah, and helping individuals realize the dream of home ownership is such a beautiful thing, and helping them with ways to get there. And so, how are there certain programs you prefer over others, or how does that work?
Absolutely. So I would say I have a list of over 30 down payment assistance programs in the state of Illinois. And then, having access to the programs is one thing. But I will say from experience, like different programs have different red tape. And so, the process to get the money at this bank may be easier than going through a different bank. Right now, I'm working with a lender. They have a big footprint in the Midwest. They're called Huntington Bank. And I like them because basically, if you are buying in a low to moderate income area, my business is primarily located on the south side of Chicago. So a large percentage of the area covers low to moderate. They'll cover $5,000 toward their down payment. They'll cover most of their closing costs, which typically amounts to $7,000 to $8,000. And this is for a conventional PMI, a conventional 3% down, no PMI product. And so it's kind of more competitive than an FHA product sometimes because of that PMI factor. The buyer actually can afford a little bit more on the principal. And I like it because the credit score requirements are a little bit lower than a lot of other down payment assistance programs.
That's great. And so you've got a lot of options out there for your clients. How do you stay informed of trends and changes in regards to down payment assistance? Because it's a lot. It's a lot.
Yeah, it is a lot. And I have like a master spreadsheet. And so every time I hear something new, I go back and reference it. But when I first started, it was a lot of research done on the front end. And once people started following me on social media, now a lot of times lenders will actually tell me, hey, just so you know, we have this program coming out, or just so you know, we have this coming out. And so I've been able to kind of make it where the information kind of is coming to me now, because people know that I'm the person that's kind of making things happen in this niche. And then a lot of people do know that I have a database of 2,000 buyers. And so it's just good to get this information in front of them. I've also had some opportunities, like I spoke at the Illinois Mortgage Bankers Association. And when I was there, I got to network with a lot of different banks and get all of their information. And so just having those people in my database makes it very easy. I'm very tech forward. And so like once I have your info in my CRM, I know how to send a mass text. So I can put all those lenders in the mass text and say, hey, what programs do you guys currently have? And I've just kind of I try to automate a lot of these things to make it easier for myself.
Yeah, that's great. Colette, you know these stories, right? And you're familiar, you've heard others like these. Any comments on like ways other people can leverage the information that you have available to find their niche?
Well, I think you paying attention to trends that are being published in your area, that always helps. But we used to have a challenge here at our office every month, okay? And we don't do it every month now, but we used to do it every month. And what we would do is we would go into our system to find extremely unique statistics to help people just spark their interest, right? Like we would say, how many homes that were sold, let's just say that, had a dog bath, okay? And so, we would come up with these statistics over the course of time and say, okay, well, I don't know, are people really interested in dog baths, or showers or whatever you call them, right? And so so that people would be able to go, oh, I never thought about the fact that maybe I should bring up the dog bath, okay? Or what is in people's requests that we see coming through and their wish list of things that they want, right? And one of the big things that's always when I was looking for a home that always bothered me, okay, was that there was never a picture of the garage. And my family are very garage oriented individuals. And so it was always a major ordeal because we had to go look at every house no matter what, even if we just drove up to it and could tell that the garage wasn't going to work, right? And so there was always a little more you could do to either entice us to go there, right? And so visuals are important if you're listing a home, right? But visuals are very important to your niche market, right? Bob, you'll probably say, why is this particular resort really great? I know because I've been over there, right? But, some places you go, they have paved lots, some they don't, right?
Right. Yeah.
And so those are all characteristics that are important to be in your listing for the MLS to be able to produce for you so that you can share.
Absolutely. I love your garage story. I mean, what you guys did was you bought about a $700,000 garage and the house came with it, right? So
yeah,
we hear this story a lot. I think as realtors, we got to remember this. One of my favorite stories, too long to tell on the podcast here, but was a story about a realtor who made me realize one day he sold a very expensive home, and in a terrible market in the early 80s when the rates were 18%. How did you do it? And he said, well, actually, I sold the wife the rose garden in the backyard, and the house came with it. It's a great story, and it's true, and it's what Colette is talking about. Sometimes as realtors, there's a lot of niches. I mean, most buyers are nichey. Most of buyers have specific needs, and so I love these stories. Absolutely, great stuff.
I mean, it seems crazy, right? That you would say that that you're the garage guy realtor. I mean, it sounds crazy, right? I mean, and there isn't one around, but I'm just saying there are all kinds of things that you can be known for. And finding that way to market yourself, not just as, hey, I'm a realtor, I can buy and sell houses. You really need to find something that helps you stand out.
No question. So Hilton Head, this area, Bluffton and Hilton Head, is extremely dog friendly, like probably the rest of the United States at this point. We love our dogs, right? And we have one agent who's doing a lot of specialties with dogs and taking pictures of dogs on the beach and putting them on a website. And by the way, I can help your dog find a house for you and that sort of thing. But I think, that's a niche, right? Because I'm a dog lover. We have 2 dogs. They're our babies. And, if I were going to buy a new house tomorrow, I can promise you the biggest, like Colette, the biggest, most important thing to me would be the backyard. I want a place where I can let the dogs out and they can run fenced in, and have at it. So, I mean, that's a niche, right? That's a whole niche, the dog owner market, and the needs of someone who has a dog or 2 or 3 is very different than somebody who doesn't do dogs. Absolutely.
Yeah. And Colette, I'm sure you've seen these trends transition over time, especially over the past 5 years or so, right? And
Sure.
Are there different trends you've seen, certainly since COVID, on what people are looking for?
Open space. I think, Bob's saying something about his backyard. Well, one of the big things, like he said, with the animals, what I'm sure everyone, listening today knows is that how many times has your client brought their animal to see if they like it, if they like the street, if they like the house, whether it be a dog, a cat, a ferret, whatever it is, right? I mean, there's things are important, but I do think that since COVID, people have trended towards what can I do maybe outside my house, the physical space of the walls and floors and roof. What is right around my house, whether it be my yard or whether it be the amenities in the community there, and I will say, I think I mentioned this the other day, all of a sudden the tennis courts were disappearing and now the pickleball courts are appearing. Where there were now 4 tennis courts, there's maybe 8 pickleball courts. There's a pickleball club. You can be the pickleball, queen of real estate. I mean, this became something. What happened with us is that somebody mentioned something about a pickleball court one day being built in one of the communities, and they were taking out the tennis court. I'm like, wait a minute, is that a thing? And they're like, yeah. So what did we do? We started, going around and trying to figure out who had pickleball courts, because we knew that was going to be important to people who, when they, built or bought in a, subdivision. That was one of the big questions, is there a pickleball court, whether it was their primary home or their secondary home, and just being ahead of what's going on. I know people don't read the paper anymore, but you know what? Reading the paper, whether it be digitally or whatever, is key. You really need to just look at the paper and see. And I read it digitally, not necessarily a local paper all the time, but just in general to see what are people talking about, and how does that fit into a lifestyle.
I love
Tina,
that. And so, yeah, go ahead, Bob.
Let me throw one other one out there, because this is a great discussion. It's making me think a lot about niches. You guys call them niche, I call them a niche. From you're born in New England. At any rate, you think about, there's a lot of people out there that have to be on a single first floor level home for different reasons, not always just handicapped, there's other reasons. But I guess, to really dive into the other niche, another one that I kind of live with is I'm a been a sailor for 40 years. I have a sailboat here. We spend a lot of time on it. And boat slips is a big deal. And it's interesting because I've had people come up to me and say, hey, you know, you're Mr. Realtor guy, you know, talk to me about what these boat slips. I don't know. I don't deal with them really. My boat sits in one. But that's something where they've done, people probably heard the term documentums. A lot of your marinas today, whether you're on saltwater or freshwater, you know, there's marinas, and a lot of these marinas now have decided to go ahead and sell the boat. It's deeded property. Okay. And so there's a heck of a niche. And I've had a few people ask me that question. Unfortunately, we have nobody in our company, even though we have 70 or so associates, that does boat docks. So, or slips. So there's a gentleman that I've always referred to and say, you know, go talk to Dan. He knows everything there is to know about this. He's a boat guy like me. And, you know, so, I mean, that's a niche. These things sell for $150,000, $200,000. And he, you know, he probably sells 5 or 6 a year. I mean, it's a great living, extra money for him. So that's, you know, and I think we could probably sit here and come up with some other niches too if we really worked at it. But you know, I'd encourage realtors listening to this program to think about things that other people don't do that are unique and different. Other realtors don't want to touch it. At the Motor Coach Resort, we had to write a whole new contract for buying a motor coach lot because it's very different than a regular building lot. So we had to come up with new contracts and new disclosures and you name it. And that made it, you know, that made it a special thing. People came to us because they knew, you know, I'm not going to mess with it. Send it over to the people at the Alliance Group at Tate and Hannah because they know how to do it.
And, you know, Bob, you bring up a great point. It's almost as important to make sure that other professionals are aware of what your niche is because you're referring people over to them and vice versa. And so, you know, I'm sure that comes into play tremendously.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I'm sure that's the case with Skylar. You know, if I had a first-time home buyer, this guy knows what he's doing. I mean, he knows his numbers. He knows where Skylar, my hat's off to you. And if I had a first-time home buyer in that market, I would just say, look, nobody can do this better than Skylar. The best thing I can do for my client and my friend is to have somebody like him handle it. It's much like doctors, you know, if you know, my doctor's not going to mess with this, you know, a spot on my head or my arm, he's going to send me to a dermatologist, right? And I think the same thing is true in real estate. So that's a good point you bring up.
Yeah, and so Skylar, how do you keep your expertise in this areas you're specializing in front of your peers?
Yeah, so I would say, you know, social media for them as well. But I do different things with lenders in the marketplace, and I try to always keep that open to other agents. You know, I'm not trying to stop anybody. I feel like it's more than enough for everybody out here to eat. And so, you know, all of these programs exist, and a lot of years they don't exhaust all of their funds. So I try to help other agents as well. I'm also coming up with some products and resources for agents that want to work with more buyers like this, be able to use them in their business. And so that'll be coming out a little bit later this summer.
And Skylar, how have things changed when you think about the down payment assistance market and where you've specialized for several years? How have you seen that transform, and how have you needed to pivot to stay in line with what the needs are of your buyers?
Well, I will say when I first got into real estate, interest rates were very low. And so we didn't really see as much down payment assistance just because the lenders had virtually no incentive to offer any. And so now I would say is a time where we do see a lot more of these programs coming available. So that's one of the changes. But I think, you know, here recently with just like the political climate, there is a lot of uncertainty around some of these programs and how long they'll be around. I'm prepared as a real estate professional to pivot if I need to, but I do, you know, that's kind of something that I can incorporate in my marketing, right? The urgency of now and why you should now. And I always tell buyers, because people are always talking about, you know, where interest rates used to be this. Well, that market, right? That was a whole time to be alive in real estate when interest rates were historically low, when you didn't know if you were coming or going because people were always calling. And if they called, you had to stop what you were doing the show because it might not be, you know, the opportunity might not have been there. That was that market. I would say that the market that we're in now yes, we have higher interest rates. Even in some of our markets, we're seeing higher costs because of low inventory. But if you are somebody who doesn't have a lot of money saved to buy a house, it's definitely something that's doable now, more so than it was 4 years ago.
Can
Yeah,
I ask Skylar a question?
sure.
Absolutely.
So, Skylar, you brought up, you providing some resources, but if I am an agent that it has a first-time buyer that needs assistance, right? What do I need to bring to the seller so that we can work together quicker or expeditiously or whatever to make this happen? What do I need to have from my buyer? Is this a lot of resources? Is this, I don't know that all niches, would require a lot of resources, but does yours?
Well, what I think that it kind of depends on the specific down payment program that you're working with. Like I said, the one with Huntington, we're just coming with the conventional pre-approval, and Huntington's got the money. There's no red tape that they really have to go through to get the client the money. If they meet the income requirements, if they meet the credit requirements, and if the property falls where it needs to on the map, they get the money. And so there's nothing, in a situation like that, there wouldn't be anything additional that's needed. But I do work in scenarios where, we need money from maybe the Chicago Housing Authority, or we need money from a government entity. In those instances, I believe it's good to just work on just hone in on your agent communication skills, because sellers get anxious. Listing agents who aren't familiar with down payment assistance get anxious, and so I just kind of have some frameworks that I use in my business, like a weekly check-in with the listing agent, just to let them know where we are in the process and what we're waiting on, because I have found that more people are open to the idea if they believe that they're being communicated with effectively. And so if they believe that, hey, we're going to, this, and even in our marketplace, there's an area on our contracts to write, if this deal is contingent upon a down payment assistance program, just writing that in there, sending information about the down payment assistance program with the offer, maybe even sending a point of contact for that program, and just giving them as much information on the front end as possible. And I believe, like we all know, because at some point everybody in real estate has had to fake it until we made it, right? And so, sometimes in the back of my head, I'm like, okay, I don't really know, but I feel like just giving them all that information up front, it definitely gives the impression to a listing agent that you are the expert and that you've done this before, and it makes them more comfortable.
Do you think that part of your success, because you have over whatever 1 million followers or something now, you said, right?
No, so I have 18,000 followers on Instagram. I have
A
over,
million.
yeah, maybe over like 4 million views on
Okay.
Instagram.
Do you
Um,
think you're developing these resources because you have some resources people can download? Does that help with your niche marketing?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. And I think that lenders kind of see that, and they see what I'm giving to the consumer, and they want to be a part of it, right? So if and lenders know. So a lot of times they know who my go-tos are, and they'll come tell me like, hey, I know you do a lot with Huntington, but we've got this program, and this is how it kind of differs, right? And so what that tells me is that you've done your research, you know who I'm working with, and you know kind of what they have to offer the client. And so like, hey, in situations where Huntington can't do this, send those people to me.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Wow.
So
Yeah. Wow. I'm
Wow.
hearing a lot about
yeah,
knowledge and resources, like
yeah.
information. The world is hungry for information when you can have that for them. So, Skylar, what have been some of the biggest challenges you faced in your market?
I would say one of the challenges that I face, well, one, I guess dealing sometimes. I'll go through the whole process of doing a consultation and connecting them with the lender. And, sometimes people always had the intention of working with whoever they were going to work with. And so that could be a challenge. And then I would say, still right? We've done a lot of work with the down payment assistance and just the knowledge around the down payment assistance, but there's still some work to do. There's still some there's still some education needed around it, because there are some times where you will submit offers and I can just kind of tell that, maybe it didn't get accepted because the listing agent didn't understand this or didn't understand that. And so I think that just making sure that everybody kind of understands that down payment assistance is not a one size fit all. You know, different programs have different requirements. Just kind of getting that message out there and getting people clear about that, I think, is one of the challenges that I face.
Yeah, and keep doing it because you're doing something right, my friend. So keep doing it. Um, in your space, what have been some of your biggest challenges?
Well, frankly, just to be totally transparent about this whole thing, we did a really good job of educating the board president, the incoming new board president, because they have elections every couple of years, about how well we do things, and a few other realtors the same. And so we kind of turned the thing into a country music song from the standpoint that suddenly the POA lady that was the president became very good friends with a realtor who had moved in, was living there in their motorhome, and decided we were making a lot of money. And they had basically decided to compete with us, which we welcomed. But that did cause some issues with friction with the POA. So a word of caution, I would say to everybody out there, that if you're dealing, and this is my second rodeo in this country music song, and that that when you have elections with POAs, it is very political, and there's a lot of friendships that can pretty much wipe you out. So I don't know how else to say it, because it's true. And so there was a friendship developed where the POA, president, was taking great care and promoting her friend over us, and kind of did us a fair amount of damage along the way. The good news is, though, that what goes around comes around. And so now we're 3 elections later, we're really getting back on top of this again, because we have a POA president who understands the service and the commitment we made and the work that we did. And frankly, when sales started to really drop off and inventory started to really build, we were able to go back in and say, look, we need to show you what we can do to help you with this, just like we did back when we started. And that's worked out really well. But the message in this is very clear. And again, from another experience in another POA here over in Kalawasi Island, is that I think any realtor that gets involved with partnering up with the POA just has to be aware of that. And I learned my lesson twice now. Hopefully I don't have to learn it a third time. And that is, really make sure you have a great relationship with the board and the president, and stay on top of that constantly, because they do have tremendous amount of control over what happens and what they're going to agree to and what they're not going to agree to. So, but again, it kind of went like this. We changed the whole thing. We turned the whole thing around. It was a mess. There were 60 lots for sale. 2 years later, there were like 8 for sale. Prices had doubled. We made a tremendous number of sales. We were heroes, standing ovation at the board of directors meeting. And then it went completely the other way, because the opportunity was spotted. And again, now it's kind of come back the other way. Just you know what, you learn from this, that you keep your relationships really, really strong. You communicate really, really well with the people that have that kind of control. And then last but not least, you just work your tail off and prove it to the people, and it'll all come back to you. And that's exactly what's happening right now. So we're happy about that.
Yeah, and I'm happy about that for you. Colette, I'd love your comments in reaction to that, because I'm sure you've heard that before.
Well, yes, and as someone who has sat on a couple of homeowners associations boards, there it can be very challenging, especially depending on the size of the board, but also the community, I think, too. But yeah, I think, as Bob, mentioned, that in any niche, you need to know your players, right? You need to make sure you're knowing your players, who are the decision makers, in that sphere, and making sure that you are educating them. Because what I find in any challenge that we have at our company, and I'm sure as most companies go, is that when there is a problem, and I'm putting that in quotation marks, it's really not a problem, it's an opportunity. And 9 times out of 10, it's an education that needs to happen. It's someone has created an opinion or had been involved in an action that really wasn't substantiated with the knowledge, right, that they needed in order to whatever they make that decision. And so the education factor is huge, especially when Skylar's doing something that not everyone does, right? Bob and his team have a couple of niches that they're in that not everyone is part of, right? And so when you educate people in the right way, there's very little room for, and I'm using this term lightly, for a discriminatory practice, right? And so that's just very important.
Yeah, great comments, Colette. Thank you for that. Skylar, what are some of the relationships in your market that you, outside of maybe we talked about with other real estate professionals, what are some of the organizations or agencies that are important for you to stay sort of communicating well with?
Yeah, I would definitely say lenders. I would also say housing agencies, housing counseling agencies, because they do provide a lot of resources for buyers. A lot of people, everybody's not ready. A lot of people have credit challenges. A lot of people have, they need to file their taxes. So just having those different resources available, just because I understand, 9 times out of 10, if I talk to somebody and they're not ready, they probably have a credit issue, or they probably have a tax issue, or they probably have, a lot of people just have a fear, and they knew somebody in the past who bought a house and got burned. And so then, like you said, that's an opportunity to educate them. And so this is somebody that needs to be on my drip campaign. They need to get these, educational emails, and so that they can become a little bit more comfortable with the process. And so, I think that those, primarily just having those different resources available, to introduce to my clients is important.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. So, Bob, I'm going to go back to you for a minute because everyone's still really interested in your niche. It's very unique. Some of the things you've done to make it all work better.
Well, I think that probably the single most important thing is just a business philosophy, and that is surround yourself with great people. I mean, that's so important. And we did that. We were very fortunate to have David and Renee. We've had a couple of agents as backups to David and Renee that are just first-class quality people. And I think, that reflects, our whole image of our company. They dress beautifully. They're total experts in every aspect of that whole motor coach resort. And, that's what got us where we finally got to. And then, by the way, that's also what's brought us back to where we are now. So we're really, we're happy to say. So I think that's probably the single most important thing. Surround yourself with great people and make sure you take really good care of them, and things will work. I think that's the key to the whole thing. I can't take all the credit. I mean, I had a lot of discussion and a lot of communication with the board presidents and the governments of the motor coach resort. And but I didn't have as much to do with the day-to-day operation of actually talking to the people. And I guess I would add one thing: if Dave and Renee were here in this program, I think what they would say to you is that what's most important to them is to build relationships with the people that are in there. I love the quote: "The more hands you shake, the more money you make." They know everybody in there. I mean, they would cruise around that place. They'd be in the clubhouse. We'd sponsor events at the clubhouse for the people that were there in the motor coach resort. But they have a tremendous reputation in there because they just give people great, good, honest service. They're experts, much like Skylar. He is an expert at what he does, no question about it. And I think that's part of the whole niche thing, is to just be better than everybody else, and ultimately you'll win. You may have some setbacks with the politics of the POAs like we have had. But again, if you just stay true to your game and be consistent, it's going to come back to you.
Yeah. And so this may go hand in hand with that answer, but if you could start over and do it all over again, what might you do differently?
Is that my question?
Yeah, for you, Bob.
Oh.
But Skylar, get ready because it's coming your way.
I think Colette maybe knows the answer to that. What would I do different? I don't know that there's anything I would do different other than what I said a little earlier, and that is that we probably needed to have a bigger hand in, or a bigger relationship in, the board and its president and those kinds of people, and some of the folks that work with their marketing department. I probably could have done a better job of staying much more on top of that. And I think that was something that I learned my lesson on that one.
Yeah.
But again, you learn lessons. Sometimes you get a second chance, and we are right now on our second chance. And so
Yeah.
don't make a mistake.
And
You can make a mistake.
Being available, right? You were available when they needed you again, right?
Oh, absolutely. And we
And
we came to them as in the right spirit and said, look, we are here to help. And but I think, I don't know, I kind of have a saying in business sometimes. It's like, look, most of the things I learned by doing them the wrong way first, and it's okay. But what you don't want to do is make the same mistake twice. And so that would be something that I would probably throw out there. I'd be very cautious to any realtor. Look, you got to understand something. When you get involved with an HOA or a POA, you're getting very involved in politics, very cliquey, kind of a thing. And sometimes you can have a great relationship, and then sometimes you don't. They favor somebody else for whatever the reasons may be. So just understand that going in, and just play your game, and and understand. Look, those elections come up every 2 years. So sometimes you just got to ride it through, and do the best you can. And I've always believed that if you wake up every day, do the right thing for people, which isn't hard to figure out, and you work hard, and you take good care of your people, you're going to come out on top. That's something I believe my entire 47-year career, and it's paid off.
yeah, it's sound advice, no doubt. Make sure you're out there shaking hands, right?
Yes.
So Skylar, same question to you. If you could start over, what might you do differently?
To be honest with you, I believe that I spent a lot of time thinking and doing research and perfecting things on the front end. And, if I could really do it all over again, I would just get out here and start doing. I think that a lot of us, we get in our heads and we're waiting on perfection, and it has to be 100% done and right before you get started. When I started talking about the down payment assistance, previously I spent a lot of money on branding and things of that nature, and it didn't really speak to who I was talking to. Now that I had decided that this would be my area of specialty, and what I noticed was that people just wanted the information. They didn't care about how fancy things looked and things of that nature, and so I just on the back end have updated the branding to kind of match the messaging and things of that nature. But I think that a lot of times we're spending so much time and energy on the front end to make something happen when we actually need to just start executing and perfecting as we go. And so that's one change that I would make.
Yeah, sometimes it's hard to have the confidence to just go. So yeah, that's great advice too. Skylar, will you comment on how election cycles impact your business, and whether that's related to associations or whether that's local, state, or national government? How does that affect your business?
So it definitely has an impact. I know that, there recently have been some changes made with Fannie Mae. And so that has impacted their down payment assistance program. So it definitely has an impact, even if you believe that it's on a macro level, it definitely trickles down to a more micro level. Even here in the city of Chicago, it hasn't necessarily impacted me, but I know that they have like the mansion tax, right? So anybody who would be in that luxury area, that would have a huge impact on their business, because now people are less prone to buying those high priced properties here in Illinois, because of them implementing the mansion tax. And so it definitely has an impact. I do believe, like Colette said earlier, anytime there's a problem, that's really an opportunity to make money. And so, if people start wanting to migrate from the state of Illinois, which they've been doing for years, there is a huge opportunity there for, listing agents. And so it's just about how you believe what side of the coin you're on.
Yeah, yeah. And Bob, any additional thoughts on that?
Not really. I've been around a long time, so I've been through a lot of different administrative changes, and I would say that it comes down to consumer confidence. When you have consumer confidence, it almost doesn't matter what everything else is doing. Consumer confidence is critical, whether in the general housing market or like we're talking about the motor coaches and things like that. I think consumer confidence is the overriding factor. You can have a lot of other things going on, but if you don't have consumer confidence, if those numbers are low, then people stay kind of frozen to the ground. I think that the analogy I usually like to draw is when, people aren't sure what's going to happen, they kind of hide and they sit still. And that's what I think you see when you have low confidence. And when confidence comes back, all of a sudden pent up demand and off we go to the races again. So
yeah,
that's kind of what we're experiencing right now, right? I think that when interest rates started to go up, last year was slow, 2023 was slow, but now it seems like a lot of buyers are ready to hop off the fence in 2025.
Well, and I think too that, what we're seeing even, in our market as well as a lot of other markets is that now people feel like they don't have to make this decision in this really tiny time frame, which really helps the buyer and the seller in a lot of instances, right? I mean, there may be a longer negotiating time frame, but the buyer can really be happy with their decision. There's not as much remorse, or there's not as much doubt because they had to get into a house when because that's what they could afford, right? And there were not a lot of options. And so I do think that, there's upside to everything. And so, yes, the houses are on the market a little longer, but you know what? You're probably going to have a lot happier buyers in the end, right? They will have had a little bit more time to think about it and, make a good decision, maybe have a couple of options. And, it's important.
There's really no such thing as a good market, bad market. We had an office meeting last week and I had our associates there and said, well, things are kind of slowed down a little bit, and they're talking. I said, wait, look, let's go back 2 years ago. All you do is complain about, I hate this business because every time I put a property in the market, I got like 27 offers. It's driving me nuts. I was like, oh, okay, so what do you want to do here? And I think that we really as realtors need to look at this as a bull market and a bear market. The stock people figured that out. We call it a good market and a bad market. It's not. It's just a different market. It's like a bull bear situation. And I have some agents that are top agents that say to me, I wish the market would go to hell in a handbasket because I'll be making money again, right? So it's true. And it's the agent's reaction to the market more than anything else. We don't create it, we just play in it.
I love that. Is a great comment. And as we sort of come to the end here and wrap things up, and I love that comment, Bob, any final advice for those who are looking to identify a niche and specialize? Any final advice on that?
Not that I haven't already said. I would look at something that the other realtors don't want to touch. I would look under the rocks for something that is unique. I think unique is the key. Obviously, Skylar has done that so beautifully, and he's figured out that's a pretty big niche you have there, buddy. And that would be my advice for sure.
That's great. That's great. And Skylar, any cautionary words as someone's identifying their niche?
I think that when you are identifying your niche, it's easy to get distracted. I would just say stay focused, make sure it aligns with something that you actually are passionate about and something that you actually like doing. It'll make it a lot easier. I liked a lot of what Bob has said today. I actually have taken notes, so I got some new things, some new wisdom that I'm going to share. But yeah, I think that, just kind of laser beam focus on the one thing, kind of be boringly consistent, and I think that it'll pay off.
That's great. Thank you all so much. Colette, I'm going to turn it over to you for some final thoughts and to how folks can find out a little bit more about Resides and how you can help support.
Well, Tina, thanks so much. This has been great. It's been a lot of fun. Not only was the prep work fun, but the webinar has been fun as well. And I think everyone needs to remember that when you're looking at your niche, identify who your champion is at your MLS, okay, as well. We are a borderless MLS, it's independent, and we take listings from anywhere. But what we do is listen to everyone's, response to everything that we do, but then also what they need. And if you have a niche, whatever it is, if it's pickleball, if it's dog baths, whatever it is, go to your MLS and say, look, these are areas that I see that we need to grow, and can you help with that? And if they're willing to help, that's going to just expand what they can do, but also what you can do. And I feel it's so important that we all listen to each other in this marketplace that we are so fortunate to be able to work in. So it's just important, I think, overall, that there's a niche in everything. There's gold in every situation. You just have to dig deep enough to find it.
Love it. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity.
If you want to learn more, just go to the link that's on the screen.